Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Great American Smokeout, the Start with Day One of panel discussion. I'm Salki Burton. I'm the Smoke-Free Subcommittee Chair of the Student Health Advisory Committee, SHAC, which is the SHAC is what is hosting our event today. And I'll be your facilitator today. Before we begin, I do want to encourage everyone to sign in there will be a link posted in the chat to sign in as it's twofold. First, for you to sign in for link purposes, and secondly, for a prize that we will be handing out to 2 winners with the names on that sign-in sheet. It doesn't take that long. It just asks for your name, your UCF ID, and as well as your email. So it shouldn't take too long. I'll give you guys a few minutes to fill that out. It's been posted in the chat. And it shouldn't take too long, and we'll get started with our event shortly. All right, we're gonna get started. Before we officially begin, I would like to say that this meeting will be recorded for future reference. So if you feel uncomfortable being recorded, I suggest you turn off your camera. But if you do feel comfortable, I also encourage you to leave it on and join us, be more interactive through this panel discussion that we're going to have today. And today's event is our panelists will be Dr. Owens, Ms. Pereira Villa, and Candace McKnight. And with that being said, we'll get started with our first presenter, Ms. Pereira Villa.
Thank you so much, Salki. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maria Pereira Villa with the Florida Department of Health in Orange County, tobacco-free Florida. And to start today, our conversation, I'm gonna give you some history about the Great American Smokeout, because it's important to have a point of reference for you. So today we're celebrating or observing what is called the Great American Smokeout. And it's basically an opportunity that we have to inspire smokers to quit, or at least make a plan to quit. And it's an opportunity for groups, for businesses, for churches, for everybody. At the end of the day, it's for the community. We want to help smokers to quit, and today is the day to actually help them out. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as you can see on the history, everything started on the 70s. In 1970, it was very common to have second-hand smoke. And I can say that as a reference myself, when I used to be a child, I remember any place that I would go, it would be smoking all around me. And the gentleman that you see on the picture right there is the person who actually had the idea of the Great American Smokeout. So he basically on the 70s asked people who were smokers to use the money that they have instead of buying cigarettes and donate it and create a scholarship fund. That's Mr. Arthur Moloney, as you can see, and which was a great idea because you will see what happened after all that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So around the 70s, around 4 years later, in California, we have the first Don't Smoke Day, which was actually established in 1976, November 18th. And the American Cancer Society, they got around 1 million of people who smoked to quit for a day. That was huge. So it was actually the first marked event as the Great American Smokeout nationwide. Next slide, please. Now, how the Great American Smokeout, which is celebrated, and I want to make emphasis on this, is celebrated every single year. We observe these every single year. What happened? What is happening? GASO helped create new laws. So after all these movements start between the 80s and the 90s, local governments start responding and banning smoking around workplaces, restaurants, raising taxes. And the efforts continues until today. So we're still doing a lot of things. We're still working with the community to keep creating, changing, and making healthy outcomes, because at the end of the day, that's what it's for. So another good thing that is happening with the Great American Smokeout, we have advocates, we have people from the community that help us to actually create policies for their own well-being. That's the other positive side. Next slide, please. As you can see through the years, on the 70s, California became the first community to limit smoking in restaurants. In the 80s, in the workplaces, it passed restriction around smoking in the workplace. And then on 94, the first 24 state lawsuit seeking to recuperate from all the tobacco, what is happening is people getting sick. Basically, they feel a lawsuit and they won, and people were getting sick from smoking. And this lawsuit gave all the money to actually create tobacco prevention programs that were paid by the Medicaid when people were getting sick. That's how all started. Then in 1994, the FDA opened an investigation, which it really helped, how the tobacco company is manipulating and targeting the kids and the youth and the advertising and promotion. And I think that's one of the biggest ones have done in the past, because you will see the effect of that in many other things like movies and in other places in advertisement. Next slide, please. 1999, we have what is called the Master Settlement Agreement. So tobacco company had to pay over $2 billion to 45 states to recover for the Medicaid cost. The another part of this settlement is also Close the Tobacco Institute. They ended the cartoon advertisement, which is great. Maybe one of other speakers will remember when used to be cartoons, and if you go back in time and you see the cartoon, you will see them smoking. From that year on, no anymore. Then in 2009, we have the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act was signed. And actually, it gave the FDA the authority to regulate the sale, manufacturing, and marketing tobacco products to protect the children from the tobacco industry marketing practices that we see all around. So what can we do? Today in the Great American Smokeout, I want to share with all of you their proven successful way to quit tobacco. However, it's very important, if you happen to know a smoker, the most important thing is that they want to quit. We cannot make anyone to do anything that they would like to do. However, we can inspire them, which is completely different. We can show that we care about them and actually share this information with them. So what I will do ahead is share with you Tobacco Free Florida services and how we can help you. Next slide, please. So what you see in front of you are the 7 FDA-approved medications. The first 3 on the top are over the counter. And I will explain later in detail. Those are the ones that we help and provide smokers to actually quit tobacco. And then you have the other 4 that has to be prescribed by your doctor. We don't have those, but at least the smoker has different options. The first 3, then you have the patch, the gum, and the lozenge. And Tobacco Free Florida provides those services plus other services that you will see in a little bit. And when you have the prescription, based on my experience, what I have seen in the community, for some people, it will work for them, the prescription, and for other ones, will work the patch or the gums. All depends on the smoker and all depends on their health, because they need to be evaluated in order to see what is the best for them. Next slide, please. So with Tobacco Free Florida, we have Quit Your Way. And there are many ways that we can help all the smokers who would like to actually quit tobacco. I want to keep in mind all our services are free of cost. Nobody pays a dime for quitting tobacco, which is great. We have the phone quit. Basically, the person can call Tobacco Free Florida, and you see the number at the bottom right there. They can call and they will make a brief interview. They need to know what do they smoke, how often, and all this is confidential. I want you to keep that in mind. So Tobacco Free Florida will send to their home 2 weeks of nicotine and patches or gum, depending on what is needed for that person. They will create what is called a custom plan, and they can actually they will have a quit coach, and they can call the quit coach in there. All the services, again, free, free, free. The second option, it will be the website. The website, it will be for those persons that maybe they don't have the time to make a phone call, or it's easier for them just to go in the computer. They will log in, put all their information, tobaccofreeflorida.com, that's the place that they need to go. And the process is the same. You have the 2 weeks available of the quitting nicotine replacement therapy. You will have a tracking log for yourself, and you will have blogs and support. The third option that we have is the group quit. The group quit before the pandemic used to be face-to-face, and it will be actually sitting down with a trained facilitator to help you to quit, and you will share with other smokers. Today's day, the way we're doing it is the way that we're doing it right now, virtual, and it's working really well. It's my understanding some hospitals here in Orange County are allowing now small classes, of course, practicing social distancing, mask and everything, but the person can go ahead and do it online virtually. Now, if you notice in theirs, you have 2 to 4 weeks of nicotine patches and lozenges, which is great. More tips and more tools that we have is 24/7. Our service is 24/7. So if the person is going through a situation that they think it might be a trigger for them to go back to smoking, they can always call Tobacco Free Florida. We have texting support, we have quit guide, we have helpful emails, and the other thing it is that I think is important to mention, it is bilingual. So if the person doesn't speak English, they can help them in Spanish as well. Next slide, please. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, oh, okay, yes. Here is the group quit. In case anybody would like to write down their phone number, this is the one that I was telling you that is virtual. They can call to the number that you see right there, and they can reserve their time and the moment that they would like to quit. One thing that I want to make emphasis, as today is the Great American Smokeout, we would like you to create a plan. We would like you to set up a date. We would like you to have a support system around you if you want to quit tobacco. Hopefully will be today a day that you actually get inspired and do it. I'm hoping for that. And from there, if you relapse, it's okay. Don't give up. Thank you so much. I think that's my last slide.
Yes, thank you for that, Ms. Pereira. That
Thank
was
you.
very valuable information that we can definitely utilize and keep in mind. But if anyone had any questions, I would suggest you put them in the chat as we go on. We do have another presenter, one of our panelists going to present next. And as we move on and you have questions, make sure to put them in the chat. And towards the end, we will review those questions and get them answered for you if we can. And now I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Owens, who will give us specific information regarding UCF smoke-free policy.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm Dr. Mary Owens. I'm here at UCF Student Health Services. I'm the Associate Director of Healthcare Compliance. And I actually go back to being way back in 2011, 2012, whenever we put our smoke-free policy in place, I was co-chair for that committee and was assisting 2 others in actually writing the policy and educating our campus-wide about the policy as we rolled it out. So I'm just going to give a little bit of information of what that looks like, why we did it, what the policy entails. So next slide, please. Okay, so why smoke-free at UCF? whenever I got my PhD, I actually did my research work and my dissertation looking specifically at the college age population. There's very little data that research that's been done on that specific age group, specifically when it came to tobacco use and smoking. And what I found, and I continue to see, is long-term smokers, they usually begin before the age of 25, and that's very typical of our college age population. I've been teaching smoking cessation classes for the last 15 years, and that's one of the first questions we ask as part of the intake form of the profile is at what age did you start smoking? And a lot of times kids say that they started experimenting back whenever they were in their early teens and continued more socializing and hiding that, and then eventually it became something that they were addicted to. So that's why, one of the reasons why is we knew that the population here, they were very much at risk for being exposed to tobacco. Also, nicotine is very addictive. As I say, that kids started at a very young age. It started as something that basically they were able to control how much they smoked and when they smoked. There's a tipping point as to when that addiction actually takes place, that it goes to the nicotine is actually driving the time and the quantity of how much that person is smoking. So it's one of those things that we see once again during those younger years, and the more you smoke, the more addictive your body is going to become and wanting to crave that tobacco use more and more, the tobacco itself more and more. One thing that research has found too is that by observing other people smoking around them, that kind of triggers a non-smoker to actually start or just start trying it out. And that we see too. We wanted to diminish that here on campus. Also, we know that tobacco is a Class A carcinogen and there is no safe level of exposure. So whenever it came to any type of secondhand smoke, even if they're outside smoking in a crowded area or outside the library, if someone walks through that area who does not smoke, they may trigger their, if they're asthmatic, it may trigger their asthma, and they're still taking in the secondhand smoke that's being emitted from that. Whenever we went smoke-free back in 2012, fall of 2012, there were just under, just about 1,000 other colleges and universities throughout the nation that at that time were smoke-free and or tobacco-free. And since that time, and this is based on July 2020 data, we see over 2,000 colleges and universities now has some type of policy put in place. So we weren't the first to do it. We were the largest university at the time to do it back in 2012. But there were others that we reached out to see what works, what doesn't work, what's the best way to roll this out to a campus community as large as ours. And also too, we know that by putting a policy in place, it does prohibit smoking to decrease that prevalence that you see here on campus. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen here since we put the policy in place, the reduction of smokers visibly seen whenever you walk around campus. Next slide, please. So the smoke-free policy, our former president, Dr. Hitt, he was very supportive of this initiative. He wanted to encourage a healthy lifestyle for everyone here on campus and basically provide clean air for everyone. Whenever we initially wrote that policy, like I said, it was myself and two others. It was a little bit longer than this. Whenever we presented it to Dr. Hitt, he wanted it just very clear and very concise. So basically, the University of Central Florida prohibits smoking on all university-owned, operated, leased, and/or controlled properties in order to maintain a healthy and safe environment for its faculty, staff, students, and visitors. Very clear, very concise. Next slide, please. In 2019, as you see, in 2012, there wasn't as many or products, or it was just kind of coming out that they had the e-cigarettes, the ends, various ends, electronic nicotine delivery devices. And what we found is the policy after a couple of years that more and more those individuals started, we started seeing that more frequently here on campus. So in May of 2019, we did have to go in and amend the policy to really clarify what smoking is. And you can see that definition there that we did add and get very defined all of the different products that it did include. It included the cigars, the cigarettes, the pipes, and it just goes all the way through a very detailed explanation of that. And at the very end, in which tobacco substitute, or other materials is smoked. So we did make it very clear on that because we did see the influx of more and more of those products being used here on campus. Next slide, please. So, and this I just threw in, and it is the Great American Smokeout. So we do encourage everyone to at least think about or consider quitting for the day, and hopefully this day will turn into many days thereafter. And I know that we know all of the health risks that are associated with tobacco. It still remains one of the leading preventative, it is the leading preventative cause of death in the US. Each year, over 480,000 deaths do occur due to somehow smoking-related causes. Smoking causes more deaths each year than the following causes combined, which is the HIV, the illegal drug use, alcohol use, motor vehicle injuries, and firearm-related incidents as well. We know that it causes many different cancers, one being, of course, with lung cancer, that smoking causes 90% of all the lung cancer deaths in men and women, and more women die of lung cancer each year, even more so than breast cancer. And about 80%, or 8 out of 10 of all the deaths from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, are caused by smoking as well. Cigarette smoking increases the risk of deaths for men and women, and the risk of dying from cigarette smoking has increased over the last 50 years. So this is a concern not only here on campus, but even, as I say, this is many times the time that someone is going to, it's going to change from being just more of a social behavior where they actually cross over to where they become addictive, and it becomes one of those lifelong behaviors that's very challenging to quit. Next slide, please. I do want to just share some national data, and I point this out because we here at UCF, we participate in a survey each year, and we've been surveying and watching our own student population and how they respond to both cigarette and e-cigarette use. And if you look on here, you can see back in 2011, the use of e-cigarette, the prevalence was below 2%, and the cigarette use was high, about 16% nationally. And as you move across the board, at some point in about 2013 to 2014, they crossed the line. The cigarette use trended down, as opposed to e-cigarette trending upward. And this data reflects 2018, where just about 8% of the population for cigarette use versus just over 20% for e-cigarettes, which I think is about 21%. And this is among our high school students. So we do see that, and I mention this too because those high school students, once they graduate, many of them come to an institution such as UCF. And then the next slide, please. This data reflects what we have here. This is just a snapshot of our own student population. So as I mentioned, each year we participate in a survey. It's called the National College Health Assessment. It is put out by the American College Health Association. Many colleges and universities participate in this throughout the year. All of the other state universities here in Florida participate in this as well. And there are two questions particularly that I do want to point out. For fall of 2011, keep in mind that this was the year prior to UCF going smoke-free, putting a policy in place. So the year prior to us going smoke-free, the prevalence here on campus with this sample was 10.7% for 30-day use. At that time, the survey, as I mentioned, e-cigarette, it wasn't that popular. It wasn't even part of a question that they singled out. They really just had the cigarette use. That question does not come about, excuse me, until fall of 2015. At the bottom there, you'll see support of UCF smoke-free policy. As part of this assessment, you can add a few questions, and we knew moving forward that we were going to put a policy in place, but we wanted to get a gauge for what the student body, whether or not they would support it or not, how much pushback we would actually get. So we were surprised in fall of 2011, we had 80% of our students that responded that they would support a smoke-free policy. The next year, whenever we actually did roll out the policy in August, this survey went out in November, that we went up to 88.1% of our students that responded actually supported the policy. And two, it kind of stayed the same as far as the cigarette use within the last 30 days at 10.6. Now we fast forward to 2015. That's whenever you can definitely see the e-cigarettes are kind of becoming more popular. We have a big decrease in our cigarette use, the 30-day use, going from 10.6 in 2012 to 4.5 in fall of 2015. However, you see that the e-cigarette use within the past 30 days is at 2.7. And unfortunately, our numbers, as you trend down all the way to spring of 2020, this past year, you can see that our trend basically follows what the national data is showing. This past spring, whenever we surveyed, they did change the survey so that it was, instead of a 30-day use, it was actually the last 3 months. So I do want to point that out, that they did revise the survey. And for last 3 months, we had 4.6 for our 3-month use for cigarettes. And then unfortunately, we had that 13% for the e-cigarette. So as I point out, it's very much following the national trend. It is so important. That's one of the reasons why last year we amended that policy to really be specific as to what the policy does cover and what it doesn't. And two, you can see at the very bottom where the support for the policy does continue. Thank goodness our students are supporting the policy that we have. We do have very strong advocates, our student ambassadors that go out and do a lot of the education and keep it front and center whenever students are walking around campus and just educating them. Next slide, please. So I just kind of shared this slide because it is something that we hope to see. You can see that here on campus, these are young people, and a lot of time smoking starts as more of a social thing that does at some point, there's that tipping point where it does become addictive, but there is hope. We do have a lot of resources available for students. A lot of our areas here on campus look like the bottom one, where they're just kind of sitting around hanging out and not visibly seeing any type of cigarette or any type of product, smoking product that they may be using. So that's our goal, is to have a completely smoke-free campus whenever you're walking around, students kind of congregating in different areas and such. Next slide, please. So with that in mind too, it is a non-punitive policy. So whenever we did go in and presented it to Dr. Hitt, that was one thing that he was very strong about, is that we do want to have this more as a community participation, that everyone, we're here to provide a safe, healthy environment for everyone that's around us. And by doing that, really us being the advocates, whenever we do see someone smoking here on campus, to just approach them, encouraging them to comply with the policy we have in place, and to refer them. We do have services here on campus. Next slide, please. We do have here in the health center, students could reach out to one of our providers and they can provide either a prescription medication like Maria had pointed out earlier, or we also have over-the-counter medications too for them. We also offer the quit smoking classes through AHAC very regularly before COVID. Now we are referring a lot of them, students that do inquire about it, that they do have the virtual classes available. But whenever things, hopefully at some point, we'll be able to go back to having on-campus group sessions. It's really nice to have that resource here for students to reach out, really going through, that they can relate to, that have the same challenges, barriers to quitting as others in similar situations. So we will have that available once we're able to start hosting in-person classes again. And next slide, please. I think I'll be passing it over. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Owens, for the valuable information. We'll now be moving on to a fun interactive game called Debunking the Myths of the Great American Smokeout. And this is with polls everywhere, so poll everywhere. So if you have your phone out, that'll be great. And so you can answer the questions that we have, and that you'll see them pop up on the screen and see everyone's response. All right, let's get started. All right, you can respond at pollev.com/gsmokeout144. It's on the screen as well. I just want to see how you're feeling today. We want our audience to be happy, but we'll see how you're feeling today. Yay, it seems like we're on the right side of the scale, of the scale. All right, we're gonna move on, but it's great to see that most of you guys are happy and to be here. I'm happy for you guys to be here as well. So thank you for being happy. Let's move on to our next question. Oh, someone's. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to move on to our next slide. I apologize, we're having some technical difficulties. Give me 1 second. All right, this is our next question. You'll be using the same link to answer this one, and let's see. All right, we got one for California area. Another one. Awesome. It feels like everyone was paying attention, so that's awesome. Oh, someone's in the Pacific, but okay. All right, we'll be moving on to our next question. It seems I have to remove, unshare my screen and then share it again for the next one. Please bear with me. All right, and then the next question. Okay, let's see who's gonna be the winner.
Yeah. Yeah.
This actually states it perfectly, honestly, because as Dr. Owens mentioned, tobacco is the #1 preventable cause of death in the US. And this is why we're here, because it is preventable. And high blood pressure is actually the second one, and obesity being the third. So it was before perfectly in line, but it's changing now. Thank you for whoever answered it to make it like that. All right, we'll move on to our next question. All right, it seems everyone seems to be 100% false. This one is a little bit of a tricky one because the CDC does say that e-cigars and other types of smoking tobacco products are harmful. That is for certain. But the CDC has also does not say yes or no. And so with that, we have to look to future research that are constantly being investigated for that answer, hopefully in the future. But currently we don't have a definitive answer as to yes or no. Dr. Owens, would you like to add anything to this question?
Yeah, that's correct, because since a lot of these products haven't been approved by the FDA, then a lot of them, they don't know, the research hasn't been done to actually see the harmful effects, what exactly is causing some of the things, like we're going to be hearing from Walker in a little bit about that. But they have not been approved through the FDA, so there's not any real regulation on them as well. So it's a bit misleading. In a lot of the research, and even some of the ways how they advertise, and Maria, you may want to chime in this as well, is because I've seen advertisements where they have for e-cigarettes being advertised as like a smoking cessation type tool to help people quit smoking. But None of that has been proven. So if there's anything else you'd like to add as well, Maria.
Are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay. No.
Oh, I can hear you
Yeah,
now.
I just did
You
it.
hear me now? Good, great. Yes, thank you, Dr. Owens. Yes, that is true. Unfortunately, some people think having electronic cigarettes is the way to quit tobacco, and it's no FDA approved alternative way to actually quit tobacco. We only recommend what I already showed you, the 3 over the counter and the prescription medication. Those are the ones approved by the FDA to quit formally tobacco. Unfortunately, as we know, the numbers are rising and mainly on youth, and that's why we have all this education and everything for our young adults, parents, and everybody, to be honest with you.
Yes, I would like to add, in terms of e-cigars being a way of an alternative to quit smoking, research has actually proven that those that try to use e-cigars as an alternative method become dual users, and instead of actually quitting using e-cigars. All right, we'll move on to our next question. If that is everyone's answer, yes, you are completely correct. E-cigars are not excluded from the UCF smoke-free policy. In fact, as Dr. Owens mentioned earlier, in 2019, the smoke-free policy was revised to be more specific as to what it entails, in which it entails e-cigars. Does any of the panelists want to add anything to this? No? Okay, we'll move on to our next question. I'm kind of curious as to why the 18-year-old individual switched over, but I will explain it just now. If I asked this question last year in December, before December and November, you would have been correct. It would have been 18. But recently in December of 2019, the Tobacco 21 legislation was passed and is effective immediately afterwards to change it to 21. So yes, everyone is correct. And if I were to ask you this last November, you would have been correct for 18. And that concludes our interactive game. We will, if you have any questions about anything that we've covered before, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will cover them in the Q&A section. But now I would like to move it on, pass it on to Candace McKnight, our guest speaker today.
See, can you hear me?
Yes, give me one second,
Okay.
sorry.
Like, the pictures are not showing.
Yes.
Huh.
This is a little bit odd.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But I hope everyone can see it on the side, on the left side panel. I do want to see, I want everyone to see the pictures. And since I can't display them here, I'll actually just have them here. I'll try to see if I can pull it up. But until then,
Okay.
do you mind introducing yourself as I
Sure.
try to do? Thank you.
So I'm Candace McKnight, and I'm honored to have been asked to be a part of this panel. It is something that has become incredibly important to my life, personally and professionally. I am a registered nurse here in Central Florida, where I've been working for the past 25 years. I'm also a UCF graduate, go Knights. But I also, I'm a mother now to a child who, a young man who was permanently annihilated, so to speak, from vaping. Something that was not, we just didn't know about this in 2018 and 2019. And the marketing of the vaping products, specifically Juul and Puff bars and other products, were directed specifically towards the younger population, our middle school, our high school, and our college age, because the numbers of addiction, the numbers of tobacco use was decreasing. And this was the perfect product to socially, to mass advertise this through your cell phone and get you to buy this product. It can come in all different types of flavors. It can be shiny, it can be pink, it can be labeled, it can be monogrammed. What a cool product. I mean, you can even put it in your sweatshirt and smoke it and you won't even see the smoke. So, I mean, it's a total cool product that was marketed specifically to get your population, your generation addicted to nicotine. Without a doubt, it is a proven fact. So yes, I am a mother, I am a nurse, and I've also become an advocate against vaping by joining an organization based out of New York, a grassroots organization now that has spread throughout the country called Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes. And it's a program that is phenomenal. Not only is it educating parents, teachers, people that are interested, colleges, high schools, principals. We are also working with legislature, with our national, our local, and our regional government affiliates to try and spread the reality of what we're talking about, the use of these products and the damage that is being done to our children's lungs, to our kids' lungs. We have no idea, none, what these lungs are going to look like 10 years from now, because these products have never been tested by the FDA. They were simply put on this market with over 50 chemicals that gets really pressed in a high heat, and it is then inhaled into your beautifully clean lungs. And these oils are attracted to the alveoli of your lungs. But what we also know, and it was just published yesterday by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, is that we also know that vaping is changing the genetic immunity response within your lungs, making you more susceptible to viruses. Viruses like the flu, viruses like COVID-19, and we all know that we are on an upswing. And working within a hospital right now, I can tell you that we are already feeling the press and the stretch of yet another wave of COVID. And this team is tired and they're stressed. And it is not the 88-year-old nursing home in my ICU. It is the 19-year-old, the 24-year-old, the 27-year-old that are presently intubated and in our ICUs that have been affected because of the history, possibly with a history of smoking. We never connected for several years. When you would ask someone, do you smoke? Well, no, my son would have told you, I don't smoke. But if we had asked, do you vape? Do you inhale anything into your lungs? Any product, any flavor, anything into your lungs, the answer would have been different. But my life has been changed completely. In January, you can go to the next slide. In January, like so many of you, my son was 19 years old. He was born and raised here in Orlando, and we are locals. We live here. This is someone that it happened to, and it can happen to you too. We never thought this would have happened in our family, ever, 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 ever. My son graduated from Winter Park High School. He was also extremely healthy. He was part of the Winter Park High School competitive cheer team. He was also part of a national organization called Top Gun, where he won national awards for cheerleading. He could tumble all over the place. He could throw those girls way up in the air. And I have a little arrow pointing to, him raising one of the girls. And he could not wait to take these skills and all this work that he's done to Florida Atlantic University and cheer for the team. He was beyond excited, just as if anybody was coming to UCF doing the same thing. Next slide, please. So in January 2019, he started, and you can see him right there in front of the very infamous I Love FAU sign. He was so excited, and the family was excited because we were going to get a chance to see Walker just blossom into something that he's always dreamed of doing. He's 6'2", he's 200 pounds. He's playing volleyball at Florida Atlantic University. He is prepping for the cheerleading tryouts, and he has full intentions of going to medical school and staying down in Boca. But you can see the next slide, and I'm not sure if it's a video that's gonna play or not. If you go back a slide, there's an action video right there. I'm not sure if it's gonna play. It probably isn't. But that's really showing the typical college kid. Hey, it's fun. He's laughing with his friends. He's inhaling a nice vaping product, probably a mango Juul. And, it's a cool thing to do. However, if you go to the next slide, 9 weeks into his first semester at Florida Atlantic University, he called home and said, "Mom, I don't feel good." We had no idea why. We thought he had the flu. He had fever, chills, his body hurt. I mean, the typical signs and symptoms of the flu. And we were like, "Walker, you're out partying, you're having a good time, like the typical college kid." We had seen him use a vape product, but in December, but I didn't think anything about it. My gosh, I mean, it's on the market, it has to be safe, right? Needless, I did not know at that time that vaping products have never even been tested by the FDA. They have just simply been put on our market and marketed to our next generation. He drove home on March 8th, where we saw him, and we immediately took him to the local community hospital, a small hospital, because I thought it was the flu. And he spent 5 days there. He was fading away in a way it's hard to tell if you're not used to something. He was going away. He was becoming oxygen dependent. He was still coherent. He could still get up and walk to the bathroom, but he was getting sicker. And he had been diagnosed in the emergency room with a lower left lobe pneumonia. And he was going to get fluid and get antibiotics, and a couple of days in the hospital and he'll be out. 5 days later, his first chest tube went in. And at that point, I had him moved over to Orlando Health, which you'll see that right beside that. On March 15th, I had him moved, and you can see that he is getting sicker. He's on a high volume oxygen. He does not remember any of this. He does not remember getting sick in the dorm. He doesn't remember driving home. He does not remember any of the 3 hospitals that he traveled to. By this time, he was experiencing 105 fevers. He had encephalopathy. He was completely hypoxic, confused, tearing off his gown, getting Ativan to try to control him. His spleen was enlarged, his liver was enlarged, his kidneys were failing, and his lungs were failing too. And the doctors were completely perplexed. How could someone just a few weeks ago be so healthy and in 2 weeks be like this? Multiple organ failure. And they thought he had some form of acute leukemia, but they needed to do a bone marrow biopsy to figure out what was going on. They were completely, and every hospital asked, do you smoke? And the answer was no. Because he didn't smoke, he vaped. Next slide. On March 17th last year, that would be the notorious St. Patrick's Day, when everybody's having a really good time and wearing green and celebrating that day, Walker went into complete respiratory failure. And when I say respiratory failure, I mean they could not put oxygen, they could not push enough oxygen into his lungs. They had completely filled. He had 2 chest tubes at that time. They could not even ambu bag him enough oxygen, and his saturations were falling. The lights were on in the ICU, the alarms were going off, and Walker was dying. Pastor was called into the room, my family was called into the room, and there was not a thing that I could do as his mother, because he was physically dying right in front of me. It was at that moment that the physician said, that's it, that's it. I am breaking every rule here, and I'm having him emergently flown. We cannot ambulance. We do not have time to Advent Health Orlando, where it is one of the only places in the state of Florida that presently provides adult ECMO. And ECMO is what is called a heart-lung machine, and they have found that in this COVID world, that ECMO is actually turning out to be a very good product to have, because it becomes your lungs. They are large garden hoses that are inserted into your body, where one hose takes all of your blood out. It pulls the CO2 that you would regularly exhale. It takes all of that out, and then it injects oxygen into the blood, and then it puts it back into Walker. He was run into the cardiovascular operating room, where the doctor was waiting and the team was ready to cannulate him for ECMO. You can see clearly in the picture, he was trached. He was on probably 12 different pumps, giving him blood pressure, taking his blood pressure, pain, sedation, analgesias, everything. And the machine that's far off in this corner is actually the ECMO machine. That was also probably one of the last days that his kidneys actually worked before they went into total failure. He was on ECMO for what is average in the nation, 9 to 12 days. However, because his lungs were so bad, he survived on ECMO for 63 days. He's one of the longest and youngest to ever survive 63 days on ECMO. Around day 40, the team that we became very close with, this is your worst nightmare as a parent, began to tell us at 40 days, we're not sure, we don't really have a survival rate. He's most likely going to die on the machine. We'll probably never be able to get him off. So we really need to start looking at a double lung, double kidney transplant. Now this, mind you guys, this is only a few short weeks ago. He was running a mat, tumbling and getting ready for his tryouts. And today they're talking to me about probably not going to make it, only without a transplant. And that's hoping that he can make it. There really was no percentage. It wasn't a 1% chance. It wasn't a 10% chance. It was an hour to hour, day to day kind of day. But because Walker was so healthy, it was also found out at this time that when my husband had to move him out of his college dorm, which was heartbreaking, the realization of knowing he would never go back to college at this point was devastating. When my husband moved Walker out of the college dorm, That's when we saw all of the Juul mango flavored products. And when we took that back to the cardiothoracic surgeon and the critical care doctor, and we told them that we found all these products, that's when all of the sort of stars aligned. That's when it really showed, they were like, this is why Walker got so sick, because the oils in the lungs from the vaping products held on to the viruses that he had called adenovirus. But he didn't just have one virus. You see the vaping oils stuck to his lungs. He had Epstein-Barr, he had strep, he had mycobacterium, and he was diagnosed with adenovirus at the same time. And this is what we're saying about the Chapel Hill article that just came out. What we're seeing from the vaping products is that there is a genetic change in the cellular immune response to viruses. Meaning when you get a virus in your lungs and you're vaping, instead of your immune system kicking in and attacking and getting rid of this virus, your immune system takes a step back, allowing the virus to really take over your body. And that is exactly what happened to Walker's body. He was there for a couple of months. He did survive. He did code a couple of times, but we brought him back every time. He was moved to the cardiac ICU, where he spent another 2.5 months rehabbing. You can see he's trached right there. You can see the tremendous amount of weight loss, an 80-pound weight loss in 2 months. You can see he also had, at that time, I think 1 chest tube left. He had a total of 3 chest tubes at that time. He was on dialysis because his kidneys were in complete failure. And the goal every day is to breathe and to walk. And you can go ahead and change these slides, but he fought every day. He was finally discharged after 5 months in the ICU with the Advent team on July 17th of last year, where he came home, where we have a house full now of different pieces of equipment. So instead of him being the typical college kid, which is strange times now in the COVID world, yes, but he's not in college right now. He goes to sleep, puts himself on a ventilator, BiPAP machine, and puts himself on a dialysis machine, and gives himself breathing treatments, and is now on oxygen 24/7. What we know is that his entire left lung was killed. It is technically dead. It is completely fibrotic, and he will likely need transplants, a double or single lung transplant, and he'll need kidney transplants as well. He is a miracle, and it was through this process, learning about the manipulation of Juul and the way they really went after and have gone after our kids through social media, wooing them into such a great, cool product, that really lit my fire. And I met the PAVE team, the Parents Against Vaping team, and have since become a strong advocate against this product for what it has not just done to my son, but when you talk to parents essentially all over, and you hear stories of kids 12, 13, 14 years old that are addicted to this product, that are willing to sell their body because they don't have cash, but they'll sell their body for a few puff bars, is unacceptable. And that is what gives me the energy to continue to do this every single day, because it is unbelievable what we have done, what has happened to our society, allowing this product to spread all over this country and the world, for goodness sake. So it's a story that's changed our life forever, and we're so grateful he's alive today, and he speaks up as well. And Walker, are you on right now that I could ask you a couple of questions?
Of course. Hey, Mom.
Hi, Walker. So I'm at work and Walker's at home. Walker, how fast did you become addicted?
So I started vaping after I graduated high school, my freshman year of college, and within a week, I started noticing that I would get twitchy and kind of looking for it. Like, where did I put it? I kind of want to hit it. I'd say within a week, I was wanting it, and within a week and a half, I was like, okay, I gotta have it. Like, where is it?
Did you think you could break that habit?
I totally told myself and everyone else I could stop whenever I want. It's no big deal. Like, I totally could stop when I wanted to. But in reality, there was no way. Like, there was absolutely no way.
What does it feel like to breathe as a 21-year-old man who now has lungs of a COPD 80-year-old? Is what I think you've been compared to now. What is it like to breathe every day?
So it's traumatic dropping a pen because I have to bend over, and by the time I get back up, I'm huffing and puffing. I can't run. I get out of breath from walking. I'm connected to oxygen 24/7, which kind of sucks a lot. Being out of breath, you'd think wasn't that bad, but being out of breath all the time and feeling like you can never catch your breath is awful. It's something I don't wish upon a single person. I feel like I can't do anything. It's devastating to me because I can't help. I can't do chores around the house. I can't pick things up. I can't even pick my dog up. The dog who loves me unconditionally, I can't even bend over to pick him up. And that is really not fun. But also, my body looks like, not only do I not feel like I can breathe, but my body looks like a surgeon's wonderland. I have 5 chest tube scars. I have a big, long 6-inch scar directly down the middle of my stomach. And then I have another 3.5-inch scar right below my belly button that goes straight down. I have bullet holes all around my body, is what we call them. I have a feeding tube scar that's just a second belly button on my stomach. And I also have my ECMO scar, which is huge. It looks like someone has ripped my skin apart. Sorry, my dad just walked in. I also have a scar in my right shoulder from a permanent catheter that was placed. I also, on top of that, have a dialysis catheter which hangs out of my stomach 24/7 that connects me to my dialysis machine, which means I cannot go out at night with my friends. And I cannot stay over at anyone's house. I have to I can't travel. I can't go places like that. I have to connect myself to a ventilator every night, along with my oxygen. And I have to be connected to a dialysis machine that is fairly uncomfortable for 9.5 hours each night.
So Walker, when you were just waking up, which was a couple of months into this hospitalization, you started to come out of this. You missed probably about 12 weeks of time. You can't talk, you can't walk, you can't breathe, you can't move. What gave you the fight, the will to live? I mean, how did you get through this?
Well, first of all, when I was waking up, I didn't just come out of a coma like you see in the movies. I didn't just kind of wake up and was like, fine. And people are so happy that you wake up. You are coming out of a drug-induced drowsy sleep that I had been in for over a month almost. I did not just wake up. I was not lucid for months. I actually barely, I remember the bad parts instead of the good parts. And there are the bad outcome is probably a 5-to-1 ratio. I didn't just come out of it. And I remember the first thing I consciously remember was I was laying flat in a bed and I couldn't move my head at all, but I could kind of move my eyes. And I was in a room that I had no clue where I was. The room was filled with hundreds of pictures of my friends and family, but I had no clue who these people were. It was like I recognize you, but I don't know why I recognize you kind of thing for weeks. And the first thing I saw was a big handwritten sign by my mother that said, "Don't speak, you are okay." And I was trapped in my own body. I was trapped there for months. I never had a lick of water or food for months. Imagine dying of thirst every day. I also could not move I had to relearn how to move my fingertips, then move my wrist and move my toes and then ankles. I had to relearn everything from scratch, literally from scratch. I couldn't move anything. I had no muscle. I was not strong enough to move.
So Walker, what do you say to somebody? Did you ever think this could happen to you?
I never in a million years thought this would happen to me because I was so healthy and I was living my best life. I had finally gotten out of a toxic high school and moved on to become something so much greater. I was working out every day. I had practice every day. I was going to cheer. It was phenomenal for me. I was living on my own. And
so how long did you vape?
About 3.5 months.
So in about 3.5 months, there was enough damage done to those lungs that tried to kill you, essentially.
All right.
And I think that's what you want to know. Walker, how do you look at your future now?
Well, I am no longer going to become a doctor. I don't have the strength or ability to do that. I'm in school right now, but I can only take one class at a time because I don't have time to take any more because I'm always going to doctors. For my future, I want to go into nursing. I want to become a ECMO specialist because they are some badass people. And I believe that I can help people in different ways because I was in their shoes.
Walker, you're a brave guy and we love you to death. And I'm so grateful that you're here today and that you're speaking up against vaping.
Of course. Love you, Mom.
Love you too.
Thank you for having me, everyone. I am actually really honored that I got to speak. And thank you.
The honor is all ours. Thank you for being here. Honestly, that was such a powerful story. It was, honestly, I'm speechless. I didn't know what to expect, really, how extensive this experience was. And so I thank you for being here. Thank you for being an advocate for those of us students that are here. And I hope that your story can inspire our attendees today, that they can share what they heard and learned today with others that they know in their life, and continue to make that impact. Maybe you can't make it directly, but you can do it indirectly. So thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you.
Now, I would like to, before we move on to our Q&A section, I'm going to place a slide with our resources that we have on campus. You can scan this QR code and it'll take you straight to AHEC for more information. And as we move on to our Q&A, I hope you all have a lot of questions. I'll leave this on the screen for you to take a picture of. Now we're going to see in the chat. If you have any question, you haven't typed it out yet, I encourage you to put it in the chat and we'll look at them right now. Doesn't seem like we have any question right now, but I personally have one. For Walker, that's experienced this firsthand, for the attendees that are here today, what advice would you give to anyone that's interested in quitting vaping, smoking any tobacco products? Like what advice, like you got to the point where you experienced everything after smoking. Some of the attendees today, they're at that part where they're into college, they're starting their college life, and they're just being sociable and not really seeing the consequences. So what advice would you give those attendees that are here today and are at that stage to prevent them from going to any other stage?
Well, first of all, you need to sit back and think, why am I doing this? Like, what is the reason behind it? If you don't have a legitimate reason, then obviously it's not something you should be doing. Second of all, vaping is not created to make you quit smoking. It's just created to get you to stop using cigarettes. So the big vaping and tobacco companies, they're not trying to get you to stop smoking. They're trying to get you to buy a more expensive product. But what would I say to someone that's doing this now is sit back and think, make a pros and cons list. Think about what could happen in the future. You know, I thought this would never happen to me, but I was that 1 in a million, and you could be that 1 in a million. There are 7 billion people in this world, and if only 1%, if that is only 1%, that is still 7 million people. So imagine how many people, I just lost my train of thought.
No, take your time.
Imagine 7 billion people, 7 million people. That is still a crap ton of people. So yes, please just think. Like don't be dumb. Like, plain and simple. Why are you doing it? To be cool? To fit in? Are you just doing it socially? I know for me, I liked going to clubs. I loved EDM music. I loved going to raves. And it was a social thing for me. But then it also became a everyday 24/7 constant use.
And the thing that you mentioned with the 7 million people, the thing is you don't know, like that tag or that check mark is on top of your head that you're going to be that person. So you don't know. The only thing you can do is be careful with what you're doing and take the quitting resources that we have available, take them seriously and start your journey.
Mm-hmm.
See if there are any questions in the chat. Seems like no one has questions. Anything. It could be to Walker, it could be to our 2 panelists that we had, Dr. Owens. Okay, I have a question from Blake. It says, Candace and Walker, thank you. Oh, actually, this is a thank you very much. Thank you for a very moving and convincing presentation. I wish every person, young and old, could hear your story. Your life is at stake when you use these products. Thank you, Blake Warren, Central Florida AHEC.
I do want to add one thing, Silky, and thank you so much, Candy and Walker, for joining us. And as I was listening to your very compelling story, thank you for your honesty and sharing this. I teach students or smokers, you know, to quit. That's what I, along with AHAC, as a facilitator. And I'm just curious as to, you know, would that have made a difference if somebody, a resource would have been there? Were you not aware of how trapped you were with vaping? I guess
I
at any point, did you see it as a problem, you know, and then consider, oh, well, maybe I do have, maybe I am addicted to this. Maybe I should think about quitting.
You know, I battled with myself. I told myself I could stop whenever I wanted to, but I also knew that I also myself knew that I couldn't stop. It was a back and forth battle. Yeah, it was a back and forth battle.
Okay.
But you know what was interesting is that we didn't know about these things
Right.
in December of 2018. In 2019, when after Walker got sick, is exactly about March, April, May, about that time when national coverage started writing articles about kids that were going off to college and they're decompensating and their parents are having to stop at the closest emergency room, and these kids are dying, or they're getting intubated, or they're having respiratory failure. That is when they started to describe the personality of the young adult. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how Walker was. He was always on the move. He was very almost angry. He was go, 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 and move, move, move. And he didn't want to hear anybody. And I read those personalities about these young adults and thought, this is exactly what was happening to Walker. Could he be vaping? And when my husband opened up the drawers at college and saw the mango Juuls, that's when it really confirmed, what we thought. But we really weren't talking about vaping in 2018. We weren't. I mean, I didn't
We
know
weren't
what it
really
was.
aware of how dangerous it
Certainly not,
originally was.
Yeah.
No one really, oh, it's here to help you quit smoking, and no one knows the behind the curtain dangers of all the gross chemicals and oils and just pure cancerous things that go into this.
There's one thing that I would like to add. First, thank you so much, Walker, Candace. There's no words to thank you for your story, sharing your personal and local story, because I think a lot of students and smokers don't realize they hear it on the news and they think it's far away, that it's not going to happen to me. I think your story today is really meaningful. Today's a Great American Smokeout. You're inspiring smoker and non-smokers, to be honest with you. I'm more than grateful. In my personal life, my father was a former smoker. He recently passed away for cancer. My grandma, lung cancer. So my love and passion is in here, and hearing your story with your mom and your family. I'm more than grateful. This is like recharging my batteries, and we're gonna keep working harder in educating and empowering youth, empowering and educating youth. That's what we want. That's what we want to do. So I just want to say that thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
I do have one last question from Berkeley Lucas. This is for Walker. It says, what would you have done differently if you had listened to a presentation like this beforehand?
So if I had beforehand, before all of this, before I started vaping, I would have thought, wow, this is really intense. If I had seen someone like me in this presentation, I would have my jaw would have been on the ground. I would completely become an advocate against vaping and smoking. There was no question about it. This is so, what's going on with this is so evil. It's pure evil, and it's going straight for youth like us. And I would completely use the resources, and knowing some people that do vape, I would share those resources to quit, and how to quit safely instead of trying to quit the way that we're told by vaping is safe.
Thank you for that. Before we officially close our panel discussion today, I do want to remind everyone that came today to sign in with the link that we provided in the chat. I will repost it for everyone to sign in. And just a reminder that two of the two individuals that attended today and signed in will be receiving a Gasso swag package. And so I do encourage you to do that before we close. And with that, does any of our panelists have any final words to share?
And just thank you again, everyone, for joining us. This really means a lot, especially to have it here for our students at UCF. Very impactful, so I can't say thank you enough.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending today. I hope this, the stories you heard today, the information you received today, you use it, you absorb it, and use it to help others in their lives. And with that, thank you everyone for attending. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.